Your
Okay,
position here?
My name is Karen Red Star, and I'm one of 2 Oglala Sioux Tribe health educators, and I work on the east end of the reservation. So that includes like 5 or 6 districts, and the other health educators on the west end. So we do a lot of training. I'm also a certified CPR instructor, trainer, HIV/AIDS instructor, trainer, and I teach 1 or 2 classes per week. And then I go into the Wombly Health Center on Tuesday mornings and I do patient education. I work with the dietitian. Also, I go to the Kyle Health Center on Wednesday and Friday mornings and work with a dietitian there and cook for them. So we feed them like 1 boiled egg, protein you can't count in a meal. We talk about carbohydrates. 1 slice of bread is 15 grams. You eat 2 slices, that's 30 grams. A lot of people will eat 4 slices, which comes to 60 grams. And if you don't eat a balanced meal, you're getting a lot of this. Carbohydrates is a fancy word for sugars. And a lot of our Lakota people don't have the understanding of what carbohydrates are. When they go into the clinics and they come in through the diabetes, the breakfast program, when we feed them and I ask them, did you tell your provider? And it's kind of difficult because our providers are mostly white people, they're non-Indian or they're different nationality, and so a lot of times that the 2 cannot communicate effectively or as well. And so I still speak our first language, which is Lakota, and so I'm able to converse with them in Lakota, and it's really a plus because they'll talk to me and tell me not only are they living with diabetes, we have cancers, you have hypertension, atherosclerosis, you have people who are living with heart problems, the retinopathy, the nephropathy, the kidney, and the neuropathy, the nerves. And a lot of times, since I've been in the clinics, it's been like 6 years. And when I first went in, I didn't know anything about diabetes. All I knew was that Hena Chahampi Kujapi, they're living with diabetes. They're sweet. Chahampi Kuja means they have a sweet sickness. And so when we grew up and our grandmother died when she was 96 years old, she did not have diabetes. She had heart problems, very healthy, chop wood, and that's how we lived, using a wood stove. We even cooked during the hot weather, and how to make dry meat, how to live off the land, how to harvest the timsila, the cheaka, how to make the cherry patties, and how to make the papa yuwakablat. So all of these teachings were taught to us. Also, our grandfather was a medicine man, a spiritual leader, you might say. He was a Sundance leader, and his name is Chief Frank Fullscrow, and our grandmother is Katie Fullscrow. So we got a lot of these teachings and understandings, and then our value system, our Wolakota, our Wayu Oniha, to honor and respect, and to Waunshila, to pity, and our spirituality, our respect, and our sharing, our generosity. And so how we live like that, we still carry those traditions today. My sisters and I, there's 3 of us, and we are the heads of our household. We run the whole house. We don't have a partner, you might say, or a husband. We have children, we have our takojas. And so through these teachings, and we lived off the land, we always had gardens. And fortunately, none of us are living with diabetes. And we're getting older. We are the elders in our family now, in our Tioshpa. And it's not a nuclear family like how the dominant society views as a nuclear family, like husband, wife, or mother, father with their children. Us, we have extended families, and so we call them tioshbas. And where my sisters and I were mothers to each other's children, and our grandchildren, we treat them all alike, and we treasure them. So we teach them, and a lot of times and we encourage them when they play, they run because it will make their hearts stronger. And so all this activity, the play, and so we're part of that, and it's really important. But going back to diabetes, as I mentioned before, we don't have that in our family yet, but we are all at high risk because of the foods, the additives, the things that are foreign to our bodies, the white flours, the sugars, all of these things, the starches that was never a part of our diet, and where today it is predominantly so. In all the stores you see around here, they don't have the fruits and vegetables abundantly. They are expensive. When you go in a store and an apple is 65 cents, 75 cents, and your can of pop is on sale for 50 cents, what are you going to buy? You're going to buy the pop. You go into a store and the pound of boiling meat is $2.79, and yet here's a pound of wieners, hot dogs, 99 cents. So you're going to get 2 of those because you want to feed your family. And so you look at the prices also in the clinics, and I tell people that, and the providers, that when we do this patient education, especially with diabetes, we have to look at the limited income or the no income, the economic hardships of many of our people. We have, I believe, either 80% plus unemployment. And those of us who are employed, we're fortunate. We hang on to our jobs. I have a college degree. I put myself through college. And so I'm fortunate to have a job. But also we look at, not only am I providing for my immediate family, but I'm providing for my takojas, because they don't get food stamps. They don't get welfare. TANF or welfare it's very difficult to get that kind of assistance anymore. Very difficult. You have food stamps, you have, they call it temporary assistance to needy families, TANF. It used to be ADC, Aid to Dependent Children. They don't have that anymore. So then the cuts are extreme. And so when you're not qualified for TANF, and when a recipient is receiving TANF, you have to go out and get a job, you might say, or do community work over here. And they have to look at the job skills that these people do not have, their ages, the transportation, all of these things they've never once looked at. To the outside world, we're just like another city, but we're not. Shannon County, we are the extreme, we are the most poverty-stricken reservation in the whole United States. We are living in third world country because we don't have access to all of these things. Now, the outside world views us that, oh, they're Lakota, they're Indian people, so they got health, education, and welfare. They got all these freebies. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And so when we have like funding, when we write for grants, and so we're up there with maybe about 300 people that are vying for the same pot of money. And so it's difficult because we're competing for this pot of money, and we're not viewed as they need it. We have to compete. So it's not like we're giving all these services. It's not like that. So living with diabetes and the barriers when there is a Washichu or a non-Indian doctor who's telling these patients and in Lakota people, you have, when they go in, there's a lot of respect, a lot of modesty. And so when they go in and see a patient, and especially if it's a male doctor, there's the eye contact. We grew up to be like you can't look right into their eyes. There's this smile, you know, the respect like. And so then they view us as either stupid or whatever. And so then already there's a barrier. And then when they can't really understand, and like one of the doctors will say, your hemoglobin A1C is too high. What are you going to do about it? And they're thinking, what is a hemoglobin A1C? And so when they come in and I'll ask them, what's your hemoglobin A1C? Doniktukahe, how are you? Oh, I'm okay. What is it? Well, they didn't tell me. You need to go back and you need to tell your provider that. And so being there, and the providers have very limited time with these patients. And so there has to be more of me, or more of the diabetes, more people working with this. And that funding is really needed, because when I come on Kili today, I will be talking about diabetes and about health in general. A lot of our young people are living with cancers, breast cancers, cervical cancer, lung cancer. We've lost a lot of people with mouth cancer. You know, this cancer that I wish somebody could study. And so we need that funding. We need more dollars to continue this diabetes. And just like the Porcupine Diabetes Prevention Project, when they had so many outreach workers, and now there's hardly any. There's none because of the cuts. And so it's not because of the underfunding or whatever. The programs are not doing what they could be doing. So
I just have a question. As we look at training for outreach workers, as you're saying, this is a different culture. So we need the importance of the outreach workers and the way that they reach the community. As we know, diabetes is at epidemic proportions. So explain how important it is that the information to get out to the masses has to be through your own people, because it's a different way of assimilating information.
When you have, because we are of our own here, and I can go in and I can do a home visit because they know me. I live amongst them, and I know the hardships. And you can't go in and say, okay, I'm so-and-so and I'm here and I'm going to teach you about diabetes. Well, you know what? They taught me. Those patients taught me. Everything that I know, I could speak off at the top of my head, that those patients taught me. And so we have to have our own people in there to continue this, because we know each other, we know how we live, and I would feel very, very apprehensive if someone else other than my own came in to talk to me about my diabetes, because they're going to use words that I don't understand. They're going to use words way above me, when we have to be very basic with our own people. And just like what I mentioned about carbohydrates, that word is a fancy word for sugars. And a lot of people, they don't understand that. And they say, well, your carbohydrates, you're just eating too much. And they'll come and say, what does carbohydrates mean? And I'll go over this whole thing with them. And after I explain that with them, and even the hemoglobin A1Cs, how it should be, what level it should be.
So you need help, obviously. You overwork. Is there no funding for what you do?
My position is funded through, it's contracted from the Indian Health Service. There are 9 programs that are contracted. It's a master health care plan that the tribe contracts. Now, out of our 2 positions was 1 position. He was getting like 70, 80,000. So they cut that down into 2 positions. Now I'm not getting half as much as that. Being overworked, overwhelmed a lot of times. It's really difficult. Like I mentioned, there's 2 of us health educators for the whole reservation, and I don't have a secretary. And the people here help me. They make my copies for me. I just do what I can, and I do not take no work home. because I can't. You have to take care of yourself. And so I don't take any work home.
Do you know how many people we're talking about when you say the reservation?
The whole reservation, I'd say about maybe, according to the U.S. Census, and I never believe the count because they always say, well, who's living here? So they'll count you, but his family's living here, and my family's living here. They're not going to, you know, they'll count this one. But there's 3, 4, 5 families living in a home, in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom home. And just like I was listening to Keely this morning, there's some people living in Wounded Knee in a tent. And when it rained, they were all soaked, but they were all sitting in there. We got those kinds of housing conditions yet. We had in Oglala a couple years ago people living in a car. Yeah, can you imagine that?
So what's the estimate how many people live?
I'd say about maybe 50 to 60,000.
That's what I needed.
Yeah, 50 to 60,000. I always know that there is not an accurate account because a lot of times people don't want those census people to come and count them. But you know, when we know people, your own kind can go in and we know how many families are living there. We know and it needs to be a different way. So I never believe that U.S. Census figures show. Okay, it is really critical that we train our own people. Very critical, because we know who we are, we know the needs, we know all the problems, the needs, the language barriers, everything. We know all of that. And so it's not because people don't want to be trained, it's the lack of funding. We don't have enough funds to do this. And this funding needs to be yearly. Excuse me, needs to just be continuous instead of always competing for it. It needs to be continuous. And also there will be, along with funding, there's all your reporting mechanisms in place. All the things that you do. I do reports. I count the numbers that I see. You have to be very accurate. You got to know what you're doing. So that's a two-way street there. To receive funding, you need to be accountable.